Trevor Ware. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm all right, Sean. How you doing, brother?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
Cool,
It's
cool.
it's so great to be with you, man. It's
Man,
been too long.
it's been since January. Wasn't that the last time we were together? Maybe I don't even know. A long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a
Right.
long time.
There you
Uh,
go.
we met on the bandstand in the Basie band.
That's right. That's right, man.
Yeah.
But I've come to learn a lot. You are broader even than what we saw together at the Basie band, brother. All the work you're doing, all the instruments you're playing, all the stuff you know. Beautiful.
I'm bored easily.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad you use your time at least wisely. Try to stay productive with it,
Well, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. And in the Basie band, of course, folks that have seen that band and first of all, how long have you been playing in the band?
I think it's about 5 years now. It feels like I've been there forever, but I think it's really been about 5 years.
And maybe people don't realize that you play electric bass also.
Yeah. I love playing electric bass. And most of my calls are for acoustic bass. I don't mind it. I like to be known for something and be able to do something well, but I want people to have a choice too. And I like all kinds of music too. Some music just calls for that different voice, Beautiful.
Yeah, we had some good conversations about playing in church.
Yes, that has its own. It's its own thing, if you will. I mean, both the style of the presentation, the choice of music, as we've discussed. That's. I mean, as we know, there are careers there to be had just in church music.
Absolutely. And in the black church, it's like talented musician is like a stereotype. It's like, I mean, it's just granted, it's ubiquitous. It's just always there, ever present.
Did you start playing in the church?
Actually, no, I didn't actually start playing in church until. I mean, I didn't really start playing in church until I was in college.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I must have been maybe my sophomore or junior year when someone told me about a church and they told me to bring my horn with me. I think I might have bumped into the pastor, Joel Brooks. Actually, I interviewed him. And I bumped into him and he said, "Hey, come to church, bring your horn." And so I did. And they invited me up to play, right away. And I felt home right away. I didn't know this, but at the time, but he was a fine musician, and he was a touring musician, and it was actually the first time I felt really like I had a pastor, like I really felt pastored.
All right.
The church that I grew up in, I think was like a Bible believing kind of church, and so I learned a lot about the Bible and stuff, but I never really felt maybe understood or like they could really talk to me and say stuff that was specific to my situation. Whereas definitely that was the case in that church, and it was good because usually what happens these days is you go away for college and you find yourself away from church.
That's right.
And
those
then
days be wild.
That's right. You find yourself away from church, and then when college is over, a disproportionate of folks stay away from church, and that's actually been a big issue in the black church, especially men. Especially men. Women will come back to the church, but a lot of men they're not coming back.
That's very true, brother. You see it in the church. You see it in the church makeup and the church leadership sometimes that just haven't been men to do some of the things that traditionally men have done,
Yeah.
and women have been, they are just, in my experience, they're just very faithful, maybe more faithful than us. I don't know. But interestingly enough, I had a different experience with music and church, because church was a big part of my encouragement early. I mean, before I could really play the bass, they would ask me to go up in church and play, and they, no matter how I messed up, I was young, I was a kid, but I got so much encouragement. I just felt like, okay, maybe I can play. And it was sort of the encouragement that got me through later in my sort of young adult years, trying to go to jam sessions and, really, really learning what I knew, and didn't know. But the church, it was good for me that way.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I know a lot of, musicians that got their start in church, and, before they could even play, they were still cutting their teeth, and the church, received them and encouraged them and helped them to develop. And many times, musicians will stay faithful to a particular church because that's where they got started, and that's where they feel loyal. They feel like they owe something, because it's where they got their start. So,
well, music is also a big part of why some patrons stay at churches or are able to receive ministry. It's just a big part of that whole experience, at least for me, and I think for most people. So that music is a big part of the church, and an important part. I think that's maybe the moral of what we're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Why would Black church be any different than the importance of music in Black culture? Such a central role in everything that goes on. Culturally, socially. I mean, I can't think of any meaningful, event that music is not a big part of it. At least not any meaningful events that I cared to, to attend.
Right. Yeah, maybe for some folks there are such things. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But anyhow, let's learn a little bit more about Trevor Ware. I mean, you said a little bit about how you got your start before you could play. You played in church, and that gave you some confidence to try to go out to jam sessions and things. What was going on around your house when you started playing? Like, what kind of music? What were some early mentors of yours? What was your childhood like?
So let me just say this. My mother is my primary musical influence. She, when I was coming up, my mom was a preschool teacher. And back in those days, a lot of the teachers, they could play a little guitar or play a little piano. And when I was, from my whole life, my mom, she would play for children's church. She would play piano. In fact, my first instrument was guitar. I don't really remember this, but my mom tells me when I was about 4 or 5, she was taking a guitar lesson, didn't have a babysitter, so I had to go. And the best way to sort of keep me from messing up the whole class was to give me a guitar also. So, I always had music around, always had a piano in the house. We laugh because my dad really had no musical talent at all. My dad, I joke, because he would go to church. My dad's voice, first of all, is like an octave below mine. And he would go to church and sing the whole song with one note. He never changed note, right? Not that note wasn't even in the key, it wouldn't change. And he was loud and strong. And I'm like, Dad, I'm taking music class, so I'm trying to, Dad, this is not musical. What you do? And my dad said? My dad said, the Bible doesn't say sing. The Bible says make a joyful noise. And that was that's how he lived, But fortunately, my mom was in key. And so, I always had instruments around. I think I started playing the bass when I was
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
Bass when I was 9. I had a sister who was a year older, and I saw she was getting out of class to do this thing called music. So whatever that was, I knew I needed to do it. And she was the one that said, play the bass. I didn't even know what a bass was, you know. And sure enough, I get to class the first day, they're handing out all the instruments, and you know, I'm watching, I want to play the bass, right? They're handing out all the instruments, like the cellos, the violins, violas. We had 5 basses at the school. By the time they get to me, my last name's Ware, so I'm at the end of the line, right? I'm the last one to get an instrument. The only instruments left were basses. All 5 basses were left. And so I'm like, okay. So my parents were teachers. I had a bass at school. I had basses from their schools at home. Like immediately, I had basses like everywhere around me. I guess nobody wanted to play the bass. And I just kind of took to it, man. I felt it immediately. And you know, as we discussed, we played other instruments, you know, but bass is my thing, man. It's my spirit. It's my thing. So that's kind of that's the very early stuff, you know. I kind of played, you know, through up to high school. I didn't play in high school at all. I quit. I played my freshman year in orchestra, but our orchestra was pretty bad. It was pretty. So I wasn't going to, you know, I was discovering girls and sports and everything, you know, fun stuff. So I didn't stay in that. And then I went to college, and my last year of college, believe it or not, I didn't study music in college. My last year, I had a couple units that were paid for. And I go, oh, let me take a bass class. And this thing happened to me where I picked up the bass in this class, and this sort of warm thing just happened all over my body. It's weird. I know it sounds weird, but it was like this feeling like of really, you are home. You have come home. And that class, I just knew I couldn't put down the bass again. From that point on, I was just compelled, you know, to stay with it. It's a weird story, huh? Yeah.
You know, it's you know, my last name is Wallace.
Yeah.
Right? So I identify with the.
You've been at the back of the line too, right?
Yeah, right. I know about that. You know, I've interviewed a couple trombonists, and it's funny because they've told similar, you know, stories about they didn't really want to play they didn't really want to play that instrument, but that was the one that was left over, and so they ended up having to play it, and then it turns out that you know it was the right instrument for them. But I think Vincent Chandler and Andre Hayward, I think they both told a version of that story.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, you know, how we come to instruments sometimes. I love to ask musicians that. How did your instrument choose you, or how did it happen that you chose this instrument, you know? And you're right, those make for some good stories sometimes.
You know, and it's funny too, because there's it's just like a commonly known thing about Alan Holdsworth. And he actually didn't like the guitar. I mean, and he would say this, you know, he said, you know, he really wanted to play the saxophone. You know, he loved Coltrane. I mean, and if you think about that, I mean, of course, you can hear Coltrane in his playing. It's very present, right? Yeah. But he would say, you know, I didn't, you know, like the guitar per se. I would have rather played saxophone. You know, the saxophone was more expensive, so my parents got me a guitar, and then when you hear his style of play and how, you know, the whole legato approach to playing, instantly, it's almost you can understand, you know, his connection to the saxophone,
The saxophone,
and him
yeah.
trying to make the guitar in some way sound like the saxophone. So yeah, so we come to the instruments that we play, and even if it is by chance, it seems like we're able to take whatever the instrument is and try to find a way to connect with it and express what it is that we want to say. Another great guitar player passed away just recently, Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And of course, Eddie loved Alan Holdsworth, and he loved, Coltrane, and he loved all of that music. I wrote I did a presentation where I was exploring specific guitar players, and I talked about Alan Holdsworth and Eddie Van Halen. I talked about why can't I remember his name right now? Basically the inventor of sweep picking, Frank Gambale, and Greg Howe. So those were the guitar players. And what I was doing was I was saying they all, obviously to me, were influenced by Coltrane, very strongly influenced by Coltrane. And the way that they tried to sort of overcome the instrument to make it be able to do some of the acrobatics that Coltrane could do is they had to reinvent the technique of the guitar. And all four of those were ones that that did that. And of course Eddie Van Halen with his tapping technique and everything. But so anyhow.
Well, I mean, it just shows you when you take off the bounds of sort of convention, saying I'm going to reach for something that we don't typically or hasn't been reached for before, then you got to do something different if you're going to get a different result. Yeah. I think that speaks to that point. Doing something different.
So one thing about your playing, Trevor, that I loved immediately as soon as I heard you play. I mean, your sound. I love your sound on the instrument. The second thing I noticed was your time. Now, the Basie Band plays a number of insanely fast charts. That's just what it is, right? And your time is just, I mean, it's just locked in, and the combination of you and Robert.
Yes, on drums. Yeah.
Robert Boone is just totally just married and locked together. But the speed that you're playing at, in the consistent time, and the feel still being there, because there's a lot of people that can play fast, but there's not a lot of people that can play fast, metronomically, and still have the feel there.
Yeah.
Well,
and there's an element of it, like when the tempo gets really fast, there's an element of it that's almost mechanical for me. It's like I need these notes, pop, 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 pop. I gotta have notes that are coming out that fast and that consistent, right? I gotta have something that's so my finger, I'm plucking, and I get my fingers sort of going in that tempo. And that part of it is just almost mechanical. Now you got to choose notes, and you have to make them speak in various ways. But man, I try to get the speed thing, the tempo on automatic, man. Just make it almost mechanical as possible. That part of it.
And so, why don't you talk to us about some other projects that you've been involved in, maybe some other artists that you play with.
Okay, let me kind of go maybe in reverse order. I just did a gig Friday night, or Monday, right, with a singer named Crystal Lewis. Now, Crystal is widely known as a gospel artist or Christian artist, but she's singing more jazz now, and I think that's sort of why our marriage worked pretty well. And so we've got some recording coming up. I've really been enjoying playing in her band. It's sort of I don't know how to describe it. It's more, maybe call it more modern jazz. She's a great singer and with a great voice and a great spirit. And so I'm really enjoying making music with her right now. I just think that there's a number of projects that are happening now, and it'll be sort of be on the horizon for the rest of the year with her. Going back from her, I guess being played right now on the airwaves is a record that we did last summer with a woman named Paulette McWilliams. Also a fantastic singer in her own right. This is, I think, her solo or debut solo record, but she's been singing in the industry for, I'm going to say 30 or 40 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but sang with Luther Vandross and Marvin Gaye and so many people. I loved working on the record with her. So that was a nice project also. So I keep going, but maybe I'll stop and see if there are questions about those.
No. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, I think you can keep going. I think you can keep going.
I mean, I'm enjoying working here in town. Also, I work quite a bit with a pianist here named Peter Smith, and he and I have a trio with Clayton Cameron on drums, and we do a lot of gigs around town. LA, we're sort of a trio that gets hired a lot by singers to do different projects. And that's a cool thing too, working with guys that you know pretty well. You know how they play, you know what they play. You can just swoop in and know what's going to happen and know how to be supportive of other people, you know, vocalists that way. So I'm enjoying working with them as well. You know, so anyway, I'm trying to stay busy too. You know, I'm teaching. Maybe we're going to talk about that in our own segment. I don't know, but you know, still teaching and trying to figure all that out on Zoom, online, you know.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about teaching when we were
somewhere on the road. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I can remember the conversations where we were. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, we were talking a little about the teaching. So where are you teaching at right now, and how long have you been there?
I'm at Cal State University. It's a public California system school in Dominguez Hills, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, maybe 30 miles or so south of LA. And so I'm the bass instructor there. I teach electric and acoustic bass students. I also periodically teach, I guess every other year, we have a strings class where, you know, as part of our music education, we're teaching folks how to the basics of violin, viola, cello, and bass. And I teach that as well. And then private students, you know, as well.
So how are you adjusting to the whole Zoom thing?
You know, interestingly enough, when everything sort of hit in February sometime, it was kind of a shock to me because as a bass player, as a jazz bassist in particular, a big part of what I do and a big part of what I teach is playing with with the rhythm section. You know, like I can teach you to, you know, play a scale. I can teach you to play a bass line, but then if, like you're saying, if you can't play with the drummer or if you can't play it in time, you know. Right. So that part, that has been to me sort of the biggest loss because we have not really found an effective way to, for instance, teach ensemble, you know, over with everybody in a different room, you know. So that part I kind of chagrin. But, you know, in terms of the private instruction, first of all, immediately I took all my bases, like we're going to go to electric bass and we're going to work on our soloing. You know, because it just so happened most of them needed to work on that. And so we can just get to that now. This is something where we don't need, we can get a track somewhere or we can get our iReel out and we can, you know, let the track run while we're working on solo concepts. So that's how we basically finished the spring semester with my bassists. You know, right. we couldn't get together anymore. It's all this way now. You know, the other thing I feel like I'm doing now that this semester started is I feel like I'm looking out for the care and well-being of my bass students more than I have. I mean, because I'm looking at them through, like I'm looking at you through this box. You're just going, really wondering, how are you? You know, again, are there any signs that you are having difficulty? And I feel for some of these students too, who, you know, it's their first year at college. They're looking for a traditional college experience. I got students who've moved over here to go to college, and now they can't go to campus. They're like in an apartment off campus. But it's such a rough deal and some of them are having to work now also to, you know, pay for school and all. It's a challenge for a lot of students, and so I'm really looking at them like, hey, you know, you need base instruction, but you need life care also. Let me make sure you're getting what you need. Let me ask some questions about that. Because, man, I hope you're my student for the next 4 years, right? I need you to, you know, I need you to be whole. I need you to be a good bass player, but I need you to be a whole human too.
Yeah, you know, I've asked my students, I can't remember a time where I have, you know, asked them how they were doing. So, I mean, you know, as a regular thing, I ask, you know, the cordial thing, how are you doing? But, you know, I would always take, you know, on the surface level, whatever they said, I would just take that to be what it was, right? But now it's like when people say, yeah, I'm all right, that, you know, I'm asking right, I'm going second, third level with any of those kind of questions because, you know, this thing is pretty challenging. You know, one thing that, you know, and this could be sort of a silver lining, or maybe is a way that musicians are able to cope through a situation like this, maybe a little better than other folks, you know, people in other kind of situations. You know, obviously on the one hand, not being able to play music on the stage in front of an audience is a major drag, and obviously not just you know, not just for the feeling whole as a person and playing with your friends perspective, but from a fiduciary perspective, not being able to do your job is you know, it's not that great. However, you know, a disproportionate number of musicians, especially really good ones, are introverts. You know, and it's something that I've noticed about a lot of the people, you know, a lot of the people that I've interviewed, in conversations that I've had with my wife, just about the way that she deals with things versus the way that I do. And because my wife is an extrovert and she is all the way extroverted. I'm an introvert, right?
She's all the way out, you all the way in.
Yeah. And the thing is that this thing has affected us, I think, in totally different ways, right? I think she really needs new people and different kinds of interactions. You know, and I don't.
Right. Or not in the same way, sir. You know?
Right. Not as much. You know, the kind of interaction that I need is this kind of interaction where there's no I'm not competing for your attention. There's no icebreakers. There's no small talk. You know, we know each other. We just get in and we just start talking. You know, and that was the main reason why I wanted to do these interviews, is because I miss my friends. I miss talking about things that were interesting, and you know, having those kind of deep, deep motivating kind of conversations. Obviously, you know, not being able to play as often in front of an audience on a stage with your buddies is, you know, that's still something that I think that things are starting to change a little bit. We'll see how things develop over the next few months, but at least being able to have these kind of conversations is, you know, rejuvenating and is fueling. But for me, you know, I can go down to my studio and I can just, you know, work for hours because that's my personality. That's where I feel like I can really get a lot of stuff done that way. But people that are not introverts, they have a totally different, I think, experience with this this moment in time. And honestly, those I'm more concerned about them.
Yeah. Right, because they're missing more. They're missing more what they're used to, or missing more of what they need. Yeah, that's a good point, and that's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll try to do analysis on my students in terms of need and see if I just see how they're taking things.
Right. One thing is often people they mistake musicians, especially ones that are on stage a lot and or teachers that are doing presentations in front of large classes or stuff like that. They often will mistake them as being extroverts, but the way to tell if someone is an introvert or an extrovert is it's not what their job is, right? It's not that. It is how they refuel.
Yes.
So and what tends to tax them, what kind of interaction with people tends to tax them. So, for instance, my wife, if we were to go to, okay, so first, let's talk about myself. If I was to go to a mixer, where, I don't know anybody, and I had to get in there and start small talking, 1 hour of that would require 1 hour of sleep. I'm sorry. 1 hour of that would require a week of sleep. That's what I meant to say. It is so taxing. It's the small talking is the part that I really have a hard time with that breaking the ice. It's always very awkward, and once I figured that out, though, the whole thing that really what it is that I'm just a terrible small talker. Okay, I'm not a good small talker. Okay, so then if I meet somebody I don't know, I'm just going to bypass the small talking and just go right to something deep. Now, of course, you can't do that. You can't really do that, though, because then you scare people.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess if you go too deep, yes, okay.
Right. But see, that's what I'm saying is I don't have a depth perception. Right. It's surface small talk, and then it's all the way there. That's just how I am. And a lot of, introverts tend to be that way. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she goes to the same event. She wants to stay, for 5 hours. Yeah. Because
she'll probably remember most of the people.
Exactly. Right? Now, I've figured out how to take this, take advantage of this reality.
Right.
And so when we go to these kind of events together, and, prior to the pandemic, we would go to a number of things.
All right.
She just sets stuff up for me.
So
she goes and does the reconnaissance work, right? She does a little small talk with people. She figures out what they do. So, this person over here, you want to talk to them. They're a musician. Or this person over here, they're an academic. You might want to talk to them. Or this person over here, this person, you might want to talk to them. That's a Catholic priest. I know you like to talk about, religion and stuff. So that's, so it just, that tends to work out better. I still want to get out of there. But
but at least you can have a reasonable conversation on your way out. That's fun. Hey man, you were smart enough to get yourself the right partner, though.
Yeah,
navigate through this. I'm gonna give you credit. Well, hey, maybe I should be giving her credit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I tease my wife about this. I interviewed her too, in this series. But I tease her because on our first date, so we met at church.
All right.
And on our first date, she was, because she is just so warm, and everybody loves her, everybody likes her, she's into hugs and all of that. It's just that's just how she is, right? And so she's poking me in my face and stuff, This is her first date, right? She's poking me in the face and she's teasing me and talking to me, and she's just trying to pull me out,
Yeah.
And
She's trying to get a little reaction out of you, get some
Right.
sort of feedback.
yeah. Well, I mean, she was getting feedback, but she was just, I think she,
not on her level. Not
yeah, right.
right.
And, that's just how she is. She's just very warm, and she knows how to get people to talk about themselves and feel comfortable and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
and that was just, that was the right thing. It was the right thing for me.
Good for you.
I'm shy. And honestly, for most of my life, I've been scared of women.
Well, that's probably why you're alive right there. That's right. No, but I know what you mean. It can, like in our society, man, especially young, you learn like the males have to approach the females, man. You got to have some game, and you ask them to dance and they say no, and you can get that kind of depression. That's not all of us. I think you got to work really hard, to get women to like you sometimes, to show yourself, But maybe it's like you're saying, maybe it's just getting past the small talk, trying to get to substance, beyond the looks or beyond the whatever, that substance, if you can get to that, then we got a shot,
Now, I did find out later that, in some of our, because we would talk on the phone, especially early on, we have these long conversations on the phone.
All right.
And I did find out that much of the time she was watching one of her favorite dance shows at the same time we were talking.
Well, okay. Hold on. Yeah, you got to tell me the significance of this. She needed that stimulation too. Is that or she dancing also?
I think she was paying attention as well as she could to me while really watching the show.
Oh, I see.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, man, sounds like she's a great multitasker. It really. and now that y'all have the child, she's got to be.
Well. Speaking of the child, my son, he just turned 7.
Yeah.
So let's see here. His birthday was in August,
Right.
And he's a rough and tumble kind of kid, and he's super extroverted. He's like his mom. He's super extroverted like that, and so this whole thing, outside of just being a kid and this whole pandemic just being horrible, in particular horrible for kids, this has just been this is like the worst thing. It makes me it makes me really upset, just to some of the stuff that he's having to even process right now. Sometimes like we'd be watching a football game and he'd be like, why is nobody wearing the mask on the sideline? And well, I think this is an old game because I don't see anybody with the mask on.
Yeah.
But how come the players aren't playing, wearing a mask, on the field and stuff like this?
Yeah.
It's because he's been, now he goes to a school. He's actually going to the school. It's a private school,
Right.
And they're, following all the mandates and everything
Right.
about social distancing. They're doing all the stuff that they can. And so at least he's able to interact with his friends there. But I'll tell you, man, that starting in March, this past March, when everything got busted to, we were basically homeschooling.
Right.
Him
Don't leave the
and-
house. What state are you in?
We're in Ohio.
Ohio. Okay. Yeah. And so did they all, like when this in March, was it everybody stay at home thing?
Yeah. So basically, Ohio was never massively shut down.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The governor put a bunch of stuff in place, and basically it's like a 5-layer thing where, if we're at a level 1, then these are the things that you can do. If you're at a level 2, then you can do less. Level 3, like that. And so we had progressed, and then we ended up digressing to one level for a period of time, and then we ended up, coming back up again. But the whole like wearing a mask everywhere, that they put that in. I mean, I'll tell you, a lot of the time I go to stores and stuff, and people are not wearing a mask, especially like convenience stores.
Oh, really?
They forget their mask and they just go in, and then they help them anyway. One thing through this whole thing that I've noticed is that people really don't have a sense of personal space. They definitely ain't respecting your personal space. Maybe that's what I should say.
You mean the 6 foot space, or you mean like sort of the personal space we had before COVID?
Well, yeah, the 6 feet space.
Yeah.
And actually, I would even say, honestly, with the way some of the stuff that I see, I would even say that the personal space from before is not necessarily always respected. So. It's just a weird thing. I mean, it's, just to think that your kid has to be, processing that kind of stuff and concerned about that kind of stuff. And it's like, when this thing actually is over, how much of that is going to sort of linger?
Yeah.
Hey,
brother, but it's your job to help him through that. It's your job to give him perspective and reference, and when he gets too hung up on him, just let him know that that's not even that big a deal. Yeah, I know it's an issue, but let's outside throw the ball or whatever you gotta do. Yeah.
We actually, we actually went to the batting cages today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He's all into. He's sports off the charts. I mean, football, basketball, baseball, like that. And he's left-handed. So, the baseball, in particular, if that really took off for him, that could actually be,
like a college scholarship.
Yeah, that could be like a career thing for him. If that's what he wants to do.
Good for him.
But he definitely has that interest, and he's making good contact with the ball.
Nice.
He's making good contact. He's got good hand-to-eye coordination.
So you actually had him in the batting cage at 7. Yeah. He's hitting the ball.
Yeah, he's hitting balls.
Is he playing T-ball yet, or Little League?
Yeah, well, they do some. So in his at his school.
Okay.
They do some T-ball stuff, and they have some general, other things.
So it's not a league thing; it's more like sort of playground area they practice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. All right.
We had him in flag. I guess it's about a year and a half ago. We had him in flag football.
Did he like that? What part did he like? Is he like offense or defense? Like what was his mindset?
Well, on in this particular league, because we're talking about 5 and 6 year olds, everybody played on both sides, right?
Okay.
So sometimes he'd be the quarterback, sometimes he'd be the receiver, sometimes he'd be receiving the ball, like getting it handed off.
Okay.
And then a lot of times he was on the defense. This boy, as soon as you snap the ball, he goes and gets the flag.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't matter. He's a straight line to the flag, and it's.
So the defense thing, he sounds like he really took to that.
He definitely did, but then he's also scoring a bunch of touchdowns. Okay. So, yeah. But yeah, he's the athletic thing. He definitely has that.
Keep him active, man. Definitely. Are you guys exposing him yet, or are you putting an instrument in his hand yet, or how are you guys handling that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a set of drums, kids' drums back there. You can't see them. I have something hiding them. And he's got I bought him a P trumpet and a guitar. And he's got I made him a little pedal board. It's an electric guitar, pedal board, and he's got his amp and all that. And he will ask. He will ask, for a lesson every once in a while. But really, what he wants to do is when it comes down, bang around for a little bit, and then sit on the lap. And that's cool. That's cool. all of the stuff is here. If he ever wants to do it, then it's all here. I mean, frankly, anything that I own he's going to be the person that inherits
Right,
it.
he's got access to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny that I don't know any other 7-year-olds with their own pedal board. That's pretty cool. Hey, but it sounds like I was just asking if you'd exposed him to any instrument, but clearly he has access to his own instruments as well as yours. So, very cool. How about your wife? Is she musical? Like, is he getting some of that from her too, or is she's is she musical?
Yeah, well, my wife is she is musical,
Okay.
but she's a dancer.
Oh, okay, that's her art. Beautiful.
Choreographer. She's got her own dance company. She teaches dance in charter school, and then also she's an interior decorator. So so the whole artistic thing is off the charts. So he's been going to dance rehearsals, in band rehearsals, choir rehearsals and stuff like that.
Before he knew what they were.
Constantly.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but when I was, I worked at this big mega church prior to the church I'm at now, and this is when he was a baby, and so I didn't, want to put him in childcare. I was kind of like, I don't want to do that. So I had him in the car carrier, the car seat, and he was on the stage behind me in the car seat for the service. So we do the worship set, and then I grab him, we go hang out. And then we do another service, and
Bro, I've done the same thing. I can tell you about it. When my daughter was 5, I was doing poetry. I was playing with a poet at the library. It was a kids program. So I'm going to take my daughter to the kids program. We get to the program. I get her a seat right up front. I'm on stage, So fortunately, it was a kids program. And it was a cute thing. It turned into a cute thing, but yeah, she saw the whole thing from sitting on my amp. But that's cool that they can be around that stuff and be comfortable and all that, And my daughter didn't really take to music, but she's a dancer. That turned to be her art. So, I'm good with just exposing them. Let them pick, just exposing all that stuff.
So is it just the daughter, or do you have any
son also? I have a 22-year-old son, and my daughter's a 29, I think. Yeah. So both great young people, great. I'm just proud of them as people. I can talk about their accomplishments and stuff too, but yeah, I'm digging them. I'm digging them as adults,
That's very cool. I think one of the challenging realities about being a musician is family.
Yes.
It's family, and It's like you see a disproportionate number of situations where there's at least a strained relationship between, members of the family in particular, like the father and the kids,
right?
Or outright just an estrangement, just based on, kids feeling like, you weren't around,
right?
When I was growing up,
or the money or whatever, they didn't get what they needed.
Yeah,
that happens too often. Yeah.
And it's been important to me because my dad was such a good dad,
right.
To try to be at least 50% of that to my son. My dad did such a terrific job and made so many sacrifices, unbelievable sacrifices, that if I can do 50% of that, then I feel like I'm all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I like hearing you talk about your dad and your son, same context, I just, in my family, I've just been thinking a lot about lineage, families develop and families evolve. And, think about what my parents sacrificed. You talk about the sacrifice of your dad, and my parents too. I think about what they were able to allow me, and then what I can now allow my kids or offer them even just a starting place. Economically, a place that's we've escalated. Education wise, we've had some escalation. In so many ways, we're moving. And I just love that. I love that concept, and I heard it in what you were saying too.
Something interesting. This is a I don't know. This is just a anecdotal, I guess. But my dad is left-handed, and so is my son. Right.
Okay.
And so my dad taught me how to do all of those things, how to tie a tie, how to tie my shoes, how to put my belt on, right?
Yeah, throw the baseball, all that.
Right. So, all of that stuff, I'm right-handed, but all of that stuff I do left-handed. So when I teach my son, when I've taught my son those things, I'm teaching him left-handed. Though I'm right-handed.
Right. Right. Okay, that's good then, I guess. I don't know what that means for you, but it's too late, I guess, huh? For you. Yeah. Man.
So can you talk to us a little bit about your you know what? Actually, let me table that question. I want to talk a little bit about the Basie Band, and maybe I recently took over the jazz ensemble at Ohio State, and that's our top big band.
Mm-hmm.
And my first instinct, so this school year is the first that I've been the director of that group. My first instinct was to do a concert of all Basie. And so our first concert, which was it was in October, we did all Basie. Okay. And now I'm extending that out to the entire school year. So
you're going to do all Basie through the school year.
All Basie for the whole school year.
Okay.
I have a large collection of charts, Basie charts, really good stuff. And
as we know, there are many, many of them.
Yeah.
It's a wide selection.
It's all kinds of, it's really, really crazy. So I want to ask you, what did you do, or what do you do to prepare yourself to play that repertoire?
Oh, well, okay. I can answer that with the short answer or the full answer. What did I do to prepare? Okay, let me. We got time, right? Can I give you?
Yeah, we got time.
So I was just thinking about this the other day. I might have answered this question differently had you asked me last week, but I've been thinking about the big bands that I played in prior to joining the Basie band. I wasn't really thinking about those as I didn't know I was going to get a chance to play the Basie band, So I wasn't thinking that I was preparing myself for that. Now looking back, we have a orchestra that was at Cal State University, Los Angeles here. It was a professional orchestra that the university sponsored called the Luckman Jazz Orchestra. And it was a professional orchestra that every quarter we had a major gig in the concert hall there. And the university supported it with they would pay an arranger to come into each gig and write for the orchestra for that gig, Wow. So I got a chance to play a lot of different kind of big bands, arrangement, big band charts. And I also played in Kenny Burrell's LA Jazz Orchestra Unlimited, another big band, Those were, I think, I didn't know it, but that was a big part of the prep. I was playing a lot of big band stuff. But to give you the short story, when I got a call from Scotty. Oh, I got a text from Scotty. And the text said, "Hey, man, I want to talk to you about the Basie band. Give me a call." Man, I didn't want to get too excited. So I was like, he could be like, they need to borrow my bass or something. I don't know why he's calling me, you know.
Right.
So I responded to his call. He was like, "Yeah, I want you to come play." He said, basically, there's a weekend. I want you to play the weekend, see if you like it, and, you know, go from there. So, but that weekend was like 3 months in the future. So I said, "Scotty, is there something in particular I should listen to?" He goes, "I'm going to send you a CD of what we're currently playing." So he sent me a CD that had like 12 tunes a band was currently playing to listen to. But what I did was I just went, man, to listen to every Basie thing I could. And I went back, you know, I started categorizing bassists. Like, you know, Walter Page, okay, I hear this in his playing. Okay, Lynn Seaton, I hear this in his playing. John Clayton, I hear this. You know, and I picked, I'm not going to tell you who they were, but there were two of the bassists that I just really resonated with. I loved what they were playing. They were more the modern bassist for the band. And I was like, that's how I want to drive the band. That's how I want the band to sound with me playing, you know? And so I kind of did this retrospective of, that was part of my preparation too. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question right, but
yeah.
That's kind of what I did to prepare. I didn't have, you know, I wish Scotty could have sent me the specific music or whatever, but I wasn't able to get any of that. So I just said, look, I'm just going to immerse myself in Basie, and I'm just going to try to bring that with me, and I'm just going to go have fun. I wasn't trying to, you know, learn a specific tune, or I was just trying to get in the mode, you know, get in the spirit and go have fun. And it worked out for me.
Yeah, definitely did. You know, it's interesting. You know, I think it was a text message from Scotty, and the way it worked for me was Byron Stripling, and I interviewed him.
Yeah, we love Byron, of course.
Yeah.
You can't talk about Basie too long without talking about Byron.
Yep. And so Byron, Scotty called Byron asking him about a saxophone player. He said, you know, I need a saxophone player. We're doing this. What was it? Nighttown. Right. We're doing this Nighttown.
Yeah.
Right.
Come to your neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. So Byron gave him my name. Scotty sent me a message, and of course I said yes, and you know, came up and did the gig. And you know, one thing about my first gig in particular, but every gig that I've played with that band, you know, everyone it's like everybody wants to see you do well, right?
Yeah.
Now, we know that some of those charts are really tricky, and they've got a lot of technical stuff. And you know, they're not going to send you the charts. They're not going to send you the charts. You're gonna have to show up, and you're going to have to be able to read. You know, and there's a bunch of stuff that is written in one way, but is not played that way.
Absolutely. That's right, man.
You know, that stuff is all over the place. Besides the fact that because of the age of some of the charts, the way that they look, it's really, you know, it's
hard to read some of them for different reasons. Or the arrangement's been changed over the years, and at one point you got to slash through section C. Well, are we playing that? Is it back in or is it out? This is the first time I'm seeing the chart. Yes, those things happen.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, you know, Dave Glasser and Doug Lawrence sitting on either side of me.
Yeah.
I interviewed both of them too. And
as you should.
Yeah. And they were just so, you know, generous with information. They were like, hey, especially Dave, look out for this.
Yeah.
This, we're going to play this really laid back. We're going to do
Well,
this,
talk to me. I'm interested in that. How did they receive you? How did that happen? Did you not know them till you guys sat down for the sound check?
That's right.
Because I know there was no rehearsal.
Right.
Right.
There you go.
So you sat down. We're a few hours before the gig. You sat down in that front row with the saxophone, and you just mentioned Dave and Dave and Doug
and Doug.
Side.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so just playing the sound check, he would point those things out. They would both say something just because they know they know where those things are.
Dave, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that told me a lot about what was going on. Also, Scotty, because he knew that there were a couple really squirrely things for saxophones, he chose those things to play for the sound check.
Yes,
and
that was good.
And it is the case that you ought to want people to sound good that are coming to sit in with the band.
Yes.
Because, you're only going to sound as good as, as everybody is capable, right? So if you have one person that is, making a lot of mistakes and stuff's not happening, it's going to pull the whole band down, right?
Yeah.
So you would want people to sound good, but I'm going to just be honest. I've been in a lot of situations where cats were not trying to help at all. And so it's just nice. It was just it basically told me everything that I needed to know.
What do you think that was about? Like going into a situation where someone's not helpful that way. Do you think that it's sort of just because it's not? I don't know how you could take that approach as a musically, as an artist. I don't know.
I'll tell you. Some folks are, I think, so insecure that if they see you as being very capable,
that overshadows their success then and their ability they have.
And that stuff is so goofy to me. I'm sorry, that stuff is like the goofiest thing because, okay, let's be honest. There is a competition in a sense because there's only a certain number of chairs in a band.
Yeah.
And if you really want to be in that band, then you're going to have to, hey, that is the reality.
Right.
But to make that the central sort of focus of what it is that you're doing as a musician, that seems to me to be totally miss the point. That doesn't seem to be
so. I'm not trying to make good music. My goal is to be in the bassy band. I mean, that you're right. That then you've just kind of limited yourself. You've got there's one chair. If you're alto, you got two spots, and that's your whole chair. But if you're trying to make good music, well, you don't even need anybody else necessarily.
Right.
You can make that happen. And I hope we're continuing to do that. I hope we can get back to that post-pandemic, making good music.
Yeah, and I hope I get some calls. I can continue to get some calls because it was a terrific experience, and it's just it's a highlight. It's been a highlight in my career to be able to play with you guys.
Yeah, it's been beautiful, man. But just the whole live music thing has been in my spirit, because I missed that too. I've been listening to like old, bootlegs that I had of me playing whatever, where you just, you play a gig and you put your phone on, you put it on the floor or something. But in some of these, the audio quality is not great, but you can hear the interaction between the audience and the musicians and the musicians and the musicians. And you can just hear the party in the music. You can hear that what live music is about. And that feeling, I guess I'm trying to get it by listening to it now, because it's hard. It's been hard to get this year, It's really hard to feel that this year.
You're hooked.
You know how it is, man. When the music is so good, you're up in the bandstand. You're not even playing. Maybe you're watching other guys. They're doing a solo, and it just feels so good, man. You got this feeling in your spirit, like, man, you don't have to pay me. I would do this for free, just because this is so fulfilling right now,
Yeah.
And you're communicating with the audience, and everybody's doing their part. The audience knows what they're supposed to do. The band's really cook. That just everybody in the room together on that page like that. I want to get some more of that.
At the risk of sounding a little bit too tree huggery and one with the universe, there is something about the atmosphere, right? There is something,
Yes.
matter matters.
Yes.
The proximity of objects matters. The size of the room, the way that the sound ricochets in a particular space. All of that stuff is a contribution to the end product.
That's right. It's a contribution to the event, maybe immediately because you can be heard or it can be seen, but it's also a contribution because it has some effect on. Like when that lady in the back, when you played that note, Sean, and the lady in the back screamed, we knew she was digging that note. So we're gonna go back to that. We know what's communicating. That's beautiful.
Yep.
So, but it's actually, I've been thinking about a different kind of communication though that maybe is on the horizon for us. And I guess I'm kind of changing the subject here, but I want to talk about sort of musicians and maybe our potential in let me call it a racially divided world.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in this environment now where there's a lot of we know what's happening in this country in particular, happening around the world, but there's some wrongs that need to be addressed. We can all talk about how and why, but there's some things that have happened that need to be addressed, and we really need to get to it. But even if we address those things with policy and with laws that we think have implemented a more equal status around the world, around the country, I still think people's hearts won't be changed. There are still people who have these hardened hearts. And those are the people, I think, Sean, that you and I are going to have to try to speak to somehow, that artists are going to have to try to do something to touch. Right. We're the ones that kind of deal with this with emotion and spirit. Right. We're the ones that kind of deal with these matters of the soul. I don't mean just musicians do. I'm talking about artists now. So maybe it's incumbent on us to start producing some works that cause people to think maybe a little differently, or give people a different idea, or help promote healing, equality, or whatever we want to see in this world. I think it's going to be us. I think it can be us who can make a huge difference, us being artists. So those of us who can't, just one more example, those of us who can't yet talk about race, who can't yet, really get into the conversation, I'd love to see a performance artist do some kind of work that causes us to practice that, or it causes us to initiate that in a way that we feel safe. And it's just theater, but let me try this conversation. It's something like that, man. I think artists, if we are creative, we can really help this country, and we can go from the ones who, we're the first to be disposed, right? In our professions, right? The art, the money you have in your budget for art, that goes first when the times get hard.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we experience, but we can also be something that's vitally important and that moves the country in a new way with spirit, And I just want to throw that out there, see what you think, see what our other artists think about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we.
So much to say.
There's so many issues You know,
Right.
there's so much stuff that's going on. But really, I think, you know, the way to fix a lot of these issues is to humanize people by actually communicating with them.
Sir.
You know,
Yes.
and I think part of what you're talking about is one method of communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about music and art and how that can sort of soften you up to be able to have that conversation. You know, this series is called Conversations with Dr. Thunder, right? And that's what it starts with, is having a conversation. Nothing good happens unless you can have a conversation. If you can't at least agree to at least be willing to have a conversation,
Yeah.
then there's really nothing that you can do. It's you know, all is lost. One thing that I'm very concerned about in our you know, national politics, especially, but to another extent, politics in general, is that there's a lot of talking points, but no actual conversation. There's no actual communication going on, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
this candidate says, you know, they know that they have to stay on their message. The focus group, you know, and the pollster told them that if they stay on this message, this particular thing polls good with suburban women, or this thing, you know, polls very good with inner city, single mothers,
Yeah.
or this one polls good, you know. So they will say, so they'll stay on that message. They'll stay on that message at the risk of not even absorbing or listening or even responding to anything else that's going on. You know, you routinely will see the same pundits, you know, they're on watching such a morning show, and they were on there with someone from the other perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and the other person might have actually been making some good points, but they haven't changed their talking points one iota,
Right.
evidenced by the afternoon show that they go on, where they say exactly the same thing. And they haven't even accounted for anything that happened earlier. You know,
Right.
one thing I like that you said was, when I asked you about Basie, you said, if we had this conversation a week ago, you may have said something differently.
Yeah.
That means that you're actually open to, you know, information and something actually potentially changing the way you see things.
Yeah.
I don't see that in politics almost at all.
Well, let me just say this. I think people think, oh, if I open myself to a new way of thinking, then I'm going against, you know, what I've always been. All right, I'm changing. But to me, you have to open yourself to a new way of thinking if you're going to learn. You cannot learn. You cannot grow if you don't open yourself to. And I'm afraid that we get so stuck in, oh, I'm right. Not only are we just sort of taking our heels in the sand, but we're not growing. We're not evolving. I hope this election shows that we're changing that. Let me just leave that right there.
Well, I'm a third party guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I have decided that I don't hear enough of what I think what would actually be effective to change the roots of the issues. I have issues with. There's several things I agree with on this sort of conservative Republican side, because I'm religious and I'm black, right? Because we tend to be pretty
elements. Yeah.
That's right. We tend to be conservative, and we tend to be, you know, family oriented. We tend to be religious. You know, that's something about, you know, black people. But I don't like the messaging, you know, and in general, I find the way that Republicans choose to communicate certain things as condescending, almost like they're jerks. It's like let me find you the most abrasive way I can say something to you, and then when you're not willing to receive it, then blame you for not, hearing what I just said I'm saying.
That's a challenge right now. I certainly that's a challenge into this presidency. It may have been a challenge before that as well.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, of course, is an anomaly because he's not really a conservative, right? So he was able to, through his populist, honestly, his mastery of pop culture via reality TV show. That's like where he got his training. He is an off the cuff guy. I think he gets criticized often for being some kind of liar. It's like, he sold 30,000 lies. Really, he's an exaggerator. He says a lot of stuff, hyperbolic, and then also he doesn't really study anything, and then he just says anything that comes to mind. And that's not exactly the same as being a liar, right? A liar is more calculated, right? They have it worked out. They know that if I say this, the advantage is that I will confuse these people over here, or, they need to hear this message, so I'll say something that sounds like, see, that's the reason that people lie, right? They're trying to trick somebody.
Yes. They're trying to say something this way, but make it sound like this.
Right. His fabrications are like totally like he's a narcissist, and so that he can't allow himself to say a certain thing. He's
like, I'm sorry, or I made a mistake.
or even willing to criticize people that clearly are not good people, or clearly are on the wrong side of something because they've said friendly stuff about him, flattering stuff about him. That's because he's a narcissist, right? So there's that. And then on the Democratic side, one of the primary issues that I have is that I don't like being lumped together with all of the stuff that you guys don't really want to deal with. So notice that it's very few times I can think of, even in history, where the Democrats haven't put blacks, minorities, basically, women, gay, transgender, they put all of this stuff all in the same sort of category when it gets brought up in certain contexts. And I think the reason they do that is they think that, hey, if we have more people, right, because this,
I guess I'm not following you. Like, I'm not quite following you in the context. Like, if the issue was like discrimination, Democrats discrimination across all categories, is that
right? Right. So I think what ends up happening is no particular group fully has their issues addressed. Right?
I see.
Okay. And in particular, the group that has really been, bypassed is black people. Right. So this whole Black Lives Matter thing. This has been one of the only times where the black thing, in particular, specifically the black thing, has been something that we've been actually talking about. And that's not to put anybody else out. I'm not trying to put anybody else out. My whole thing is, if we are not able to address stuff that we need to deal with in the black community, why should I believe that you're going to do anything that's actually going to help, help my community, right? So it's like you have this, sort of like, from my perspective, two choices that don't seem to work out very well. You have one party that doesn't really address your concerns. At least they'll bring them up, but they won't really focus on it because they have to deal with all of these other things also. They feel like they have to, right? And then you have the other side that maybe certain things from a Christian perspective, and it's, I may agree with, but the way that they're presented, I mean, how are you going to smack somebody in the face and then say, okay, now come and vote for me? I'm sorry, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, true.
So I'm third party.
It's kind of interesting because I'm independent as well, but my concept is I don't want to be taken for granted. I want to look at all the issues independently, and make a decision.
We're not monolithic. They keep talking about the black vote, the black vote. We don't all think the same thing.
Nor should we. And I do think, I had this conversation the other day with my daughter just about, it's good that black people are, some of us are rich and some of us aren't, that's progress, that we represent all strata economically or wherever. That's part of us being part of all of society, but that also means we're going to have different opinions. You can have some black people who vote for Trump and some black people who don't.
Right.
That's okay. That's freedom, right?
Right.
But those people should be making decisions, in my mind, based on how they feel at that moment, based on the history of the parties and what they believe and what the country needs. And I'm really hoping that everybody's going to get out there and vote this year. I really feel like seeing this early voting that's happening, that's encouraging, man. I hope we can keep that going, man, every year. To people to come out and say, hey, this is what I feel. Speak their mind, because we saw what happened like 4 years ago, where everybody thought Hillary was going to win, Right. Some other people came out and spoke their minds. It's kind of interesting to me. And some people in 2016 decided they weren't going to speak at all, right? They didn't vote. They let it go by, So I think that's a lesson to all of us on all sides, man. This is your chance. You don't have a better chance than this.
It's interesting. One thing that something that we never hear. We always hear, get out and vote, exercise your rights, and then you have that whole, especially in the black community, your great grandparents, they couldn't vote and they died, so that you could vote, and now you're going to stay home. That whole guilt thing, reason to vote. So we have that too. And I don't know, maybe that's not so bad. Maybe we should get out there and do what we need to do, because it's not just about us, right?
Well,
However,
I don't think we should do it just because we're black now.
Yeah, right. Now, but you don't hear anybody talking about the real power in a representative democracy, and that is contacting your representative, right? Because local government and your representatives, even on the national level, they're the ones that are actually going to get in there and actually do the work. So we could vote them in, but if you actually can sway the way that they think about something, or have a conversation with them, in some meaningful way, at least so they know what your perspective is, then you actually have a better chance of actually seeing the kind of government that you want to see. What is it? 97, 98% of policy, no matter if it's a Democrat or Republican in the White House, will be the same. for you and me on the local level. Right. 97, 98%. And part of the reason for that is because no regime can come in and fire everybody. is because there's too many thousands and thousands of people, the bureaucrats, the people that their feet are on the ground, they're the ones that actually know what's going on. If you actually fire them, you can't run your government. And so what usually happens is you have all these campaign promises, then you get in, and then you talk to the guy that's that's feet are on the ground, and he says, "Well, I know you campaigned on this, but here are the logistical reasons why you can't actually do that." Right. So again, the real power in government is actually connecting with those folks that the feet are on the ground, but then also, like I said, with your representative. But of course, that's not a message that I think is widely disseminated, because I think in general, what they want us to do is just basically vote and then let them do whatever they want to do.
I think that is like you vote. Yeah, I was. That vote was a mandate. Right. I voted me for so much that all my policies are mandated. And that's you hear that justification all the time.
Oh yeah. Or such and such a election was a referendum on
such issue, right?
It's like, but get out of here.
What you're saying kind of, I don't know, it's starting to disturb me a little bit, because that being true, let's say it's true that the real power is, the representative is being able to communicate with your representative and maybe convince them.
Right.
How often do you think that's happening with individuals?
Not often, percentage-wise. Yeah, not often. Now,
I think now if I say groups, I can think of probably groups. Then we can start talking about lobbyists and whatnot. Groups who are corporations and whatnot. Yeah, okay, that's different. But individuals, man, I don't think that's happening that much.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. Well, I know it. I mean, I know it isn't. I mean, because if it was, I think that the government would have to stop doing certain things. They'd have to really pay attention. If it was even if you had 15% of the population, 10 or 15% constantly contacting their representatives. Yeah, that would be transformative. That would change. Stuff would change like overnight, because I mean, that many millions of people contacting government on a regular would be, that would be the real thing.
Interesting. But it's hard for me to hear these kind of conversations without sort of thinking, well, what am I going to do? Okay, you got a good idea, Trevor. What are you doing with it? So I think you've just left it out there for everybody watching this video. You tricked us. You gave us homework.
That's right. Yeah. And speaking of homework, this is a little bit of a left turn. I interviewed Branford, and this isn't directly from our interview, but on his, we talked about it in his interview. He did a documentary film called Before the Music Dies. And it was like I want to say it was a late 90s, early 2000s documentary film. Very well done. It has like Questlove in it, and Erykah Badu, and Dave Matthews, and a bunch of heavy artists and stuff. And one of the things that Branford said in that, which is quoted quite often, he said, if you ever want to guarantee that you get something wrong, just get 100 people in a room and have them vote on it.
That was Branford's statement.
That was Branford's statement. Now think of this. Some of the implications of this statement. Okay, so we're talking about voting, right? Now, here's one of the inherent problems with voting. People are not equally knowledgeable about what they're voting on.
True.
Right?
I'll agree.
So now, say for instance, if you my wife likes dance shows, like these judge dance shows.
Yeah. So you think you can dance kind of shows,
right? So say for instance, if you have two judges that they're academically trained. They were professionals for a long time, and then they had their own, dance studios where they taught, for years and years, and they're experts at what they do. And then you have one person that won one of the dance competitions, but had no training, right? No formal training, doesn't know anything about history, the history of dance or any of that kind of stuff. Maybe doesn't even know the terminology as far as, some of the dance positions. All right. Now you have three people, right? So if judge 1 and 2, the one that have been academically trained, they say, you know what, this is a really, good person, whatever, X, Y, and Z. Judge 3 says, I don't agree with that. I'm saying this other thing, right? Now, at least in this situation, you have two that are knowledgeable, and they can outweigh the ignorant one, right? But now imagine that really what the situation is like you have 10 judges and only one of them actually understands what's going on. The other 9 are totally ignorant to what's going on, right? And I'm trying not to be, I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist, right? But a realist sometimes will say things that sound dark because it's reality, right?
I'm with you.
Now, I would like to think that people, when they go to vote, that they have done some research, they have got some knowledge about what it is that they're voting on. They know something about the voting history of the candidates. They know something about, their
policies,
something. Right. And then a lot of these other issues that end up on these, elections, that they, issue 1 or issue 3 or whatever it is, that they would actually know something about them. Right. But since I'm a realist, what I believe is happening is maybe 1 out of 10 have actually done that. And the other 9 are just doing things totally based on random occurrence, or they're just going along with whatever their demographic, tends to go along with. And so then what that does is that at least in my mind, what that does is it makes, well, yeah, voting is important. We should vote. But if all it takes is one ignorant person to invalidate my vote by chance voting an opposite way that I voted, not because they believe in the opposite perspective, not because they know anything about it, but just because, hey, I brought we used to talk about this thing called pencil rolling, and you have to do it with those pencils that have flattened sides, have like 8 sides or something. And what we would do, well, I guess I didn't do this too much, but what some of my friends would do on these multiple choice tests is they would write a different letter on each side of the pencil.
Oh.
Roll the pencil, and wherever it landed, whatever was straight up, that was going to be the answer, right? Pencil rolling. So you have one person that is voting based on knowledge of the issues and a lot of research. You have another person pencil rolling.
All right. They
happen to be opposite of your vote. That just canceled your vote out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's okay. So if that is the case, then I think it's an uncomfort. We should be trying to educate them other people,
That's
and
true.
not leaving
I agree.
10 ignorant to one knowledgeable.
I
And,
agree.
I think that, as I say that, it's easier said than done, right? Because it's one thing to educate people on sort of facts and policy. It's another to sort of then try to sway with other kind of arguments, preferences, your history, whatever, that the other person might not care about. The political backgrounds, what other policies that candidate likes. It can be complicated. But man, I just feel like I have to keep doing what I can do.
Yeah.
Even if they're stacked against me, I know a lot of Black people have this attitude. Like I just got to do the right thing if I succeed, great. If I don't, these things may be out of my control,
Right.
but I can control how I'm going to feel tomorrow morning when I wake up. And that's what causes me to take out my pamphlet and read that stuff.
Yeah.
Even those propositions you're talking about, I read that stuff. And because there is information available, if we want to find what these ballot measures are about or what these candidates' voting records are, or all that's available, if you want to,
Yeah, it is available. I tell this joke, I say this to my students sometimes, do you know it or do you Google know it?
Right.
So
Right.
I do suppose that there is somewhat of a skill associated with coming up with precise search terms to find something, that's been cataloged in, all of recorded history.
Right.
Every piece of information, known to mankind that you can find on Google, right?
Right.
On the search. So I suppose having a command of search terms that will lead you close to what it is, your destination, I suppose that is a skill and it can be refined, but simply relying on that and not actually knowing anything, you got to know some stuff.
I agree. And you have to be willing to learn some stuff if you're going to know some stuff. Maybe the conversation's going full circle because we started out talking about being open to ideas, being open to new, to conversation, like you're saying, and I guess we're just making the point again, like on politics, maybe we should be doing that too. Talking, expressing ourselves, communicating. I've heard some ideas from you that I want to, maybe I don't know if we got time tonight, but I know I'm going to bounce them back and go, hey, talk to me more about that. I didn't get to hear the end of that yet. It's my opinion. But I mean, that's what that's what we have to do. This communication around our political process so that we can learn what we should do.
Yeah. And don't be afraid when you hear something that's different, that sounds different,
Yes.
It's okay. It's all right to hear something different. And it doesn't mean that, sometimes I feel like there's like this fear-based thing where, because people, they want to get this guy out of there at all cost, so that if you bring something up that it sounds like it could be critical at all of something that the other person represents, then all of a sudden you're the enemy and you're doing a disservice, to your own people or something by being willing to bring up some of these issues.
Right.
And I just don't see that to be the case. And I think that people are, they're smarter than that. I don't think they're that easily fooled. And so then, therefore, I think it's okay to have like real conversations and actually ask questions about things that you're concerned about and that you've always had questions about,
But there's one thing that's concerning me now that I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but we talked about getting information. I just feel like in today's world, there's so much disinformation, just straight bullshit that people put up for whatever reason, and
Yep.
and that catch on. So it's, you talked about, hey, you got to research, you can Google, you can find a Google search term, but even after you've done that, you got to look at your results to go, this source is a left-wing source. This source is a right-wing source. Tell that by all the things that they publish, right? Maybe what I want to do is find some writing that's not, that's more common or more mainstream. It's not on those extreme. So my point is, even after you Google something, you got to look at the results and validate it your own self to see if is this legitimate. Should I even read this that I got as a search result?
I think it's true that one of the reasons why so people tend to get their news from the same source, right? It's because they're lazy. I mean, part of it is like maybe that's a little harsh.
No.
We don't have unlimited time, and we all have to go to work, and we have stuff to do. It's not like we're just sitting around, right? So politicians, they get to go on these shows and stuff. That's their gig. That's their full-time thing, right? But our job is actually, we have real jobs, that we're actually going to do. And then if we have time, then we can go and research this other stuff. And so I can see that there is potentially a challenge with having enough time to actually do, legitimate research to figure out, what you actually think about whatever the issues are. I get that. But one problem is that people tend to get their news from the same source. So say if I say, hey, I'm just going to get all my stuff from CNN. Yeah. So whatever CNN says, I'm just going to CNN. That's just what it's going to be. And so if CNN just decides that based on the people that watch CNN, because one thing people have to learn is that news is a for-profit industry. It's a for-profit industry. Cats, it's not out of the goodness of their hearts. None of that. That's not what this is. It's a for-profit industry. It is, they are trying to get as many live watchers as possible.
They want to get those eyes so they can get the advertisers to pay the big bucks.
That's right. And they're going to tend to say certain kinds of things that they know that the people that tend to watch their show want to hear them say. And so the only way actually to see what's true and what's not true, what's opinion and what's fact, is to take something like a CNN and like a Fox News, for instance, and watch programming on the same topics, and then whatever things that agree, you put those in the fact category.
Right.
And whatever things disagree, you put those in the opinion category.
Right.
Okay? That is the only way to actually get anywhere close to what the actual facts are.
Like, I don't know if I would have said it that way. I totally agree. You need multiple sources these days. You got to have maybe if you validated a source several times and you've tested them over and over, and so now you're starting to trust them. Okay, I could see that too. But man, you got to look to make sure you're getting the truth. You have to be smart about seeing what's being presented, and you have to respect that what you may be saying that's being presented very effectively may not be the truth.
That's right.
It may just be a very effective pitch, some BS.
That's right. And right. It could just be a particular strategy to get more viewers so that they can get the big money for their advertisers. It could just be that. Right. And
I think it often is that, especially on social media. It's almost mostly that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And, well, man, this has been a great conversation, man. We could keep going and going and going. As a matter of fact, we're just going to have you back. Hopefully, after all of this stuff is blown over, what is this? The combination of events that have collided in this time period, what is like, probably will never happen again.
Yeah,
in
right.
the history of the world, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, we've got this asteroid, the refrigerator-sized asteroid that's supposed to hit the planet the day before the election. Come on, man. You can't make this stuff up.
And we're not going to forget 2020, are we? This year will not be forgotten.
No, I mean, right. The pandemic, followed by the protests and riots,
racial unrest, right?
Followed by the. Oh my goodness, man! This stuff is just craziness.
Hey, brother, hey, you keep your family safe. You just get with that wife and that son, just hug them up, brother. Keep them right. That's what we got to do no matter what. Yeah. That's our first priority,
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Well, God bless you, man. And we'll definitely be rapping again soon.
Yeah, brother. Looking forward to it. Great to talk to you, Sean.
Absolutely. See you.
I'll see you, brother.
Bye.